I used to think our marriage couldn't be shaken by anything, until that charity gala proved me wrong. One dance was all it took to tear the illusion apart. As my wife moved in another man's arms, her eyes never once searched for me in that crowded room. She swayed with him like I'd vanished from the world, completely unaware that her life was about to crack the second I walked out those doors. Now she's desperate to explain, but some betrayals cut too deep for any apology to fix. My name is Connor Wallace. I'm 38 years old, and until 6 months ago, I genuinely believed I had the kind of marriage people admired. Rachel and I met in college, dated for 3 years, then got married in a small ceremony overlooking Lake Michigan. We bought our first home in a Chicago suburb, adopted a golden retriever named Duke, and talked about having kids someday when life felt less busy. Rachel climbed the ladder at a PR firm downtown while I built my career designing commercial buildings. We weren't rich, but we were stable. We had Friday date nights, spent weekends working on the house, and took one big trip every year. Our life wasn't flashy, but it was ours, and I thought we were content. My dad used to say, "Connor, a good marriage isn't about grand gestures. It's about choosing each other every single day." And I did. I chose Rachel without hesitation, day after day. Even when we hit rough patches, even when we argued about the same stupid things again and again, it never once crossed my mind that our marriage might not last. Friends would vent about their partners, and I'd silently feel grateful, convinced that Rachel and I were different, solid, unbreakable. At least, that's what I believed, right up until that charity fundraiser in April. It was one of those black tie affairs Rachel's firm always managed, a gala for a cancer research foundation at the Meridian Hotel downtown. She'd spent weeks organizing it, and I was proud to be the husband on her arm, even if those events usually bored me senseless. I rented a tux, shined my shoes, and braced myself for an evening of shallow small talk and overpriced champagne. If I could go back to that night, would I change anything? Would I have stayed home, pretended to be sick, found some excuse not to go? Or would I still have walked into that ballroom, blissfully unaware that my entire life was about to implode? I honestly don't know. What I do know is this: once you've seen something, you can't unsee it. You can't unfeel the instant you realize your whole life was built on quicksand. And you can't lie to yourself that the person who shared your bed for 12 years isn't capable of destroying everything with a single dance. The Meridian Hotel ballroom glowed that night. Crystal chandeliers spilled light over polished marble floors. Champagne flutes clinked as Chicago's elite murmured about their latest charitable endeavors. Rachel looked incredible in a deep blue gown that fit her perfectly. Her blonde hair was swept up, showing off the diamond earrings I'd given her for our 10th anniversary. "You clean up nice, Wallace," she whispered, adjusting my bow tie before we walked in. Her perfume hung in the space between us, familiar yet oddly distant, like a memory I couldn't quite reach. The evening unfolded the way they always do. I lingered over the same glass of scotch, making polite conversation with complete strangers. Rachel moved easily from group to group, shining in her element. Every so often she'd catch my eye and smile, and I'd remember why I put up with these functions. Around 10, the band started playing, and couples drifted onto the dance floor. I was trapped in a conversation with a retired architect who refused to stop reminiscing about his glory days designing suburban strip malls. Rachel had vanished into the crowd, probably fixing some last-minute issue for the event. "Your wife does remarkable work," the man said, waving a hand vaguely toward the room. "The foundation's fortunate to have her." I nodded and turned to see where he was gesturing. That's when I saw them. Rachel was out on the dance floor with a man I didn't recognize, tall, dark hair, and radiating the kind of confidence you only get from old money or sudden success. His hand rested far too comfortably on the small of her back as they moved with the music. It wasn't just a harmless dance. I'd watched Rachel dance with colleagues before, polite, appropriate, forgettable. This was something else entirely. She was looking up at him with a gaze I hadn't seen directed at me in years, a mix of curiosity and desire that made my stomach twist. What hit me the hardest wasn't how close their bodies were, or even the way his hand wandered. It was how completely wrapped up in him she seemed, laughing at whatever he murmured in her ear, oblivious to everything else. She danced with him like I didn't exist, like the room full of coworkers and mutual friends had disappeared. I waited for her to glance my way, for some small acknowledgement that would loosen the knot tightening in my chest. But she never did. She was lost in a moment that didn't include me, with a man who was clearly more than just another contact on her email list. My whole body went cold, despite the heat of the crowded room. I set my empty glass on a nearby table and straightened my jacket. The retired architect was still talking, but his words had turned into static. I didn't shout. I didn't march across the dance floor or demand answers. Instead, I turned and walked toward the exit, wondering if she would even notice that I was gone. I stood by the bar, watching Rachel and her dance partner glide across the floor. People flowed around me, but I might as well have been invisible. A waiter offered me another drink, and I accepted on autopilot, my eyes never leaving the scene unfolding in front of me. The song shifted into something slower, more intimate, the kind of music where casual partners usually step apart and retreat to their corners of the room. Instead, he pulled her in closer, and Rachel, my Rachel, melted into him like that was exactly where she belonged. I knew that expression on her face. I'd seen it directed at me years ago when we first started dating. It was that mix of awe and desire, like she couldn't quite believe her luck. Now, that look was reserved for a stranger. Quite the event, isn't it? A voice cut into my thoughts. Marissa, one of Rachel's colleagues, had appeared beside me. Your wife did an incredible job putting this together. She always does, I answered, my voice steady in a way I didn't feel. Marissa followed my gaze to the dance floor. Her smile faded. Oh, I see Adrian's here. I didn't realize he'd been invited. Adrian, the name hit me like a punch. This wasn't some random man. He had a name, one Marissa clearly recognized, and one that made her uncomfortable enough to excuse herself almost immediately. I watched them for what felt like hours, though it was probably only a few minutes. His hand drifted lower on her back. He murmured something into her ear that made her throw her head back and laugh. His lips brushed her neck for the briefest second, so quick I might have doubted it if not for the way her fingers tightened on his shoulder in response. This wasn't a first encounter. It wasn't harmless flirting. This was a well-rehearsed dance between two people who already knew each other far too well. I'd always thought of myself as calm, rational, the kind of man who doesn't cause scenes or jump to conclusions. But standing there watching my wife move in another man's arms with that level of ease and intimacy, something inside me fractured. I saw two options: march across the dance floor and confront them in front of Chicago's elite, causing the kind of scandal Rachel would never forgive, or walk away with whatever shred of dignity I still had left. I chose the latter. I set my untouched drink on the bar, straightened my jacket, and headed for the exit. No theatrics, no angry stares over my shoulder, just step after step until the cool night air hit my face and the noise of the gala faded behind me. As I handed my ticket to the valet, I noticed my hand was shaking. It wasn't just rage, though there was plenty simmering under the surface. It was the sudden, brutal awareness that our marriage might have ended long before tonight. I was only now catching up. The valet pulled up with my car, and I tipped him generously, a habit Rachel always teased me about. "You don't need to buy people's approval, Connor," she'd say. I wondered briefly if Adrian was the type to tip well, or the kind of man who expected perfect service without so much as a thank you. I slid into the driver's seat but didn't start the engine right away. In my rearview mirror, I could still see the hotel's grand entrance, guests arriving fashionably late. Part of me expected, hoped, to see Rachel rush out the doors, calling my name, demanding to know why I'd left without saying goodbye. She never appeared. I drove aimlessly through downtown Chicago, city lights streaking across the windshield, as I tried to process what I'd just seen. A part of me wanted to cling to the idea that I was overreacting, that they were just co-workers sharing a dance, nothing more. But that weak, rational voice was drowned out by the image of her face, the way she looked at him, the way I had ceased to exist for her in that moment. Without really deciding to, I pulled into the parking lot of Ollie's, a dive bar where my friend Tyler and I had watched more games than I could count. It wasn't stylish, but it was familiar and anonymous. Exactly the kind of place where a man could sit with a drink and a bruised ego. Inside, the bar was half empty, a basketball game playing on the TV above the counter. I took a corner booth and ordered a whiskey neat. The bartender, a grizzled man in his 50s who clearly knew the type of night I was having, set the glass down without asking questions. 2 drinks in, my phone buzzed. "Rachel, where are you? I've been looking everywhere." I stared at the screen, my thumbs hovering over the keyboard. 2 hours. It had taken her 2 hours to realize I was gone. The gala she'd poured weeks into had mattered more than the disappearance of her own husband. Or maybe it wasn't the event that held her attention. Maybe it was Adrian. I typed and erased several replies before finally settling on the simplest one: home. 3 dots appeared right away, then vanished, then appeared again. Rachel. Are you okay? Did something happen? The sheer audacity of that question made me laugh out loud, earning a quick glance from the bartender. Did something happen? Only the complete collapse of everything I thought our marriage was built on. I switched my phone off and signaled for another drink. If Rachel hadn't noticed my absence for 2 hours, I figured I could at least give myself the same amount of time before dealing with whatever story she was preparing. As I slowly finished my 3rd whiskey, I realized the part that cut deepest wasn't just the betrayal itself. It was the absence of regret in her eyes when I'd seen them on that dance floor. It was knowing that, in that moment, she hadn't spared me a single thought. And that felt like the real end of our marriage. I lost track of time at Ollie's. The crowd had thinned out as midnight crept closer, leaving just me, the bartender, and a couple of regulars half watching the end of some West Coast game nobody really cared about. My phone had been buzzing on and off, Rachel's calls slowly shifting into increasingly frantic texts. Another? The bartender asked, nodding toward my empty glass. I shook my head. Better not. Got any coffee? He gave me a look of approval and disappeared to make a fresh pot. I wasn't drunk. 3 whiskeys over several hours weren't enough to blur my judgment, but I needed my mind sharp. The initial shock was wearing off, replaced by a cold, focused anger that wanted action, not escape. While I waited for the coffee, I finally checked my phone. 12 missed calls and a long string of messages, each more urgent than the last. Connor, are you coming back? Please answer me. At least tell me you're okay. Please come home so we can talk. I'm leaving the gala. I'll be home in 20. That last one had come in over an hour ago. She was probably at home by now, waiting. I pictured her pacing the living room in that blue dress, rehearsing whatever story she had decided to tell me. The image made my stomach twist. The bartender set a mug of strong black coffee in front of me. I thanked him and weighed my options. I could go home and confront her right away, but what would that actually solve tonight? We'd argue, she'd cry, I'd yell, or worse, I'd forgive her too quickly without even understanding what I was forgiving. No, this conversation needed daylight and 2 sober people. I pulled out my phone again and dialed the one person I knew would pick up no matter what time it was. Connor? Tyler's voice was instantly alert. Everything okay, man? Not really, I admitted. Can I crash at your place tonight? He paused just for a second. Yeah, of course. Is Rachel okay? She's fine. We're not, I said. I'll explain when I get there. 20 minutes later, I was on Tyler's couch with a fresh cup of coffee, walking him through everything I'd seen at the gala. He listened without interrupting, his expression hardening as I described the dance, Adrian, and the way Rachel had acted like I didn't exist. Jesus, Con, he said finally. Are you sure it wasn't just... Don't, I cut him off. Don't try to justify it. You didn't see them. He ran a hand through his hair and exhaled. Okay, I believe you. So what's your plan? I don't know, I admitted. I need answers before I decide anything. You really think she'll tell you the truth? It was the question I'd been avoiding all night. Probably not at first, I said. But I'll know if she lies. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Rachel. Please just tell me you're safe. I'm worried sick. I typed out a short reply. I'm safe. Staying at Tyler's. We'll talk tomorrow. The typing bubbles appeared almost immediately, then vanished. A full minute passed before they came back. I'm sorry. 2 small words that confirmed everything and clarified nothing. You can take the guest room, Tyler said, watching me stare at the screen. It's not much, but the bed's decent. I nodded. Thanks. I doubt I'll sleep much anyway. Want me to come with you tomorrow when you talk to her? The offer hit me harder than I expected. No, but thanks. I need to do this on my own. Later, lying on the bed in Tyler's spare room, I stared up at the ceiling and kept replaying those 2 words. I'm sorry. Not, it's not what you think. Not, you misunderstood. Just sorry. Sorry for what, exactly? For dancing with him? For letting me see it? Or for whatever had been going on between them long before tonight? Deep down, I already knew the answer. And that was the worst part. Morning showed up far too bright, sunlight slicing through the blinds like an accusation. I'd slept maybe 3 hours, my dreams a tangled mess of faceless dancers with Rachel's features and Adrian's hands. My phone showed 6 more missed calls from Rachel, and a text from Tyler letting me know he'd gone out for his morning run and that there was coffee in the kitchen. I showered, borrowed a clean t-shirt from Tyler's drawer, and looked at myself in the mirror. The man staring back seemed older, as if the last 12 hours had added a few years. Dark circles under my eyes, unshaven, hollow. I looked exactly like what I was, a man whose life had been knocked off its axis. The coffee helped clear the fog, and by the time Tyler returned, I had a plan. Maybe not a brilliant one, but a plan. "You look like hell," he said, grabbing a water bottle from the fridge. "Feel like it too," I replied. "Thanks again for letting me stay." "Anytime?" He studied me. "You heading home now?" I nodded. "I need answers." "And if you don't like what you hear?" he asked. It was the same question I'd been circling all night. "Then I'll have to decide what's worth saving," I said quietly. Tyler clapped my shoulder. "Call me later. Let me know you're okay." I promised I would and left. The drive home passed in a blur of rehearsed questions and imagined responses. What was Rachel going to say? Deny everything? Downplay it? Confess outright? Every possible version of the conversation came with its own kind of pain. Our house looked exactly the same as when I'd left it the day before. A cruel reminder that life-shattering moments don't rearrange furniture or leave visible marks on the walls. Rachel's car was in the driveway. I sat in mine for a minute, trying to summon the nerve to go inside, then finally forced myself to the front door. I found her in the kitchen, still in her pajamas, clutching a mug of tea. Her eyes were red and swollen. She'd been crying. "Connor," she breathed, relief flooding her voice. "We need to talk," I said flatly, staying on my feet even when she gestured toward a chair. "I know," she murmured, setting her mug down. "About last night?" "Who's Adrian?" I cut in. The color drained from her face. "How do you—" "Doesn't matter," I said. "Who is he, Rachel?" She drew in a shaky breath. "He works with the foundation. We met a few months ago during the planning for the gala and nothing. We're colleagues." "Friends?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Try again. Friends don't dance the way you two were dancing." "It was just a dance, Connor. You're overreacting." There it was, the minimization I'd been expecting. "A dance so innocent you didn't even notice your husband walking out of the room," I said. "I was busy. It was work. I had responsibilities." "Including to the stranger with his hands all over you?" A flush crept into her cheeks. "That's not fair." "No, what's not fair is watching my wife look at another man the way she used to look at me. What's not fair is realizing I've been missing signs for God knows how long." I took a slow breath. "I'm only going to ask this once, and I want the truth. Is there something going on between you and Adrian?" Rachel's eyes dropped to the floor, and in that silence, I already had my answer. "I don't know how to define it," she finally said, barely above a whisper. "Have you slept with him?" The words scorched my throat. "No. God, no. It's not like that." "Then what is it like, Rachel? Help me understand." She looked up, tears streaming down her cheeks. "He makes me feel seen, important. The way you used to before work and routines and mortgage payments became our entire relationship." Her words hit like punches, not because they were malicious, but because there was a painful truth inside them. We had become comfortable, predictable. I had taken our marriage for granted, assumed it would always be there. "But so did you," I said quietly. "You had a choice." "He makes you feel seen," I repeated, pacing the kitchen because I couldn't stand still. "And that justifies everything? What about our vows, Rachel? What about the life we've built?" She flinched. "I'm not trying to justify it. I'm trying to explain how things evolved." "Evolved?" I echoed. "Like it's some natural process I should have expected?" "That's not what I meant." I stopped pacing and leaned against the counter. "How long?" Rachel stared into her tea. "We met 4 months ago at a planning meeting for the foundation. At first it was just professional. Then we started grabbing coffee after meetings, then lunch. We'd talk about everything: work, dreams, frustrations, things I used to talk to you about before you got so wrapped up in that downtown project." The accusation stung, mostly because there was truth to it. I had been working longer hours on the lakefront tower project, coming home exhausted and missing dinner more often than not. But none of that made this okay. "So, it's my fault you developed feelings for another man?" I asked. "No." Her eyes flashed. "I'm not blaming you for my choices. I'm telling you how it happened." "Has he been in our house?" The thought made my skin crawl. "In our bed?" "God, no. Connor, I told you. It wasn't physical." "Yet," I added. She didn't answer that. I dragged a hand over my face, feeling the rough stubble scrape my palm. "I need to know everything, Rachel. No more half-truths." Over the next hour, she laid out the details of her relationship with Adrian Thompson, a 38-year-old financial advisor who volunteered with the Cancer Foundation in memory of his late mother. It had started with harmless coffees, then long lunches, then constant texting, daily phone calls on her drive home, inside jokes, shared secrets, an emotional affair in everything but name. "He knows you exist," she said quietly. "I talk about you." "How thoughtful," I replied, the bitterness thick in my voice. "Does he know I saw you two last night? That I walked out while you were in his arms?" She shook her head, tears falling freely now. "I didn't realize you'd left until the event was almost over. When I couldn't find you, I thought maybe you'd stepped outside for air or gone to the hotel bar. When you didn't answer my calls or texts, I panicked," she whispered. "I knew then that you must have seen us. That's when I realized how it must have looked to you." "How it looked," I said flatly. "Not how it was. Connor, please. Have you told him about last night, about this conversation?" She hesitated, and that was all the answer I needed. "You've talked to him today," I said. It wasn't a question. "He texted to make sure I got home okay," she admitted. "I told him you weren't here when I got back." "Did you tell him why?" Another pause. "Yes." I let out a humorless laugh. "So he knows his competition has caught on?" "It's not a competition," she protested. "Isn't it?" I pushed away from the counter. "Because from where I'm standing, it sure as hell feels like one. And apparently, I've been losing for months without even knowing I was playing." The question hung in the air between us. Was my marriage already over? And if it wasn't, did I even want to save it? "I need time to think," I said at last. "And space." Rachel's eyes widened. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm not sure I can sleep in the same house with you right now, knowing you've been sharing parts of yourself with another man for months." "Connor, please. We can work through this. People recover from things like this all the time." "Some do," I agreed. "I'm not sure I want to." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "You don't mean that?" "Don't tell me what I mean," I replied, my voice disturbingly calm. "You lost that right when you decided our marriage wasn't enough for you." I brushed past her into our bedroom and pulled the suitcase from the closet, the same one we'd used for our anniversary trip to Michigan just 6 months earlier. Rachel hovered in the doorway while I packed enough clothes for a week. "Where will you go?" she asked, her voice small. "Tyler's probably, or a hotel. I haven't decided." "For how long?" I closed the suitcase and turned to face her. "I don't know, Rachel." I honestly didn't know if I was coming back at all. She started crying again, but I felt strangely removed from it. Her tears didn't move me anymore. I couldn't tell if she was crying because she truly regretted what she'd done, or because she'd been caught, because she was afraid of what it might cost her. "What about Adrian?" I asked. "Are you going to keep seeing him while I'm gone?" She looked stunned. "No, of course not." "Why not?" I pushed. "If he makes you feel so understood, so seen, why give that up just because your husband found out?" "Because I love you," she whispered. "I never stopped loving you." The words should have felt like a lifeline. Instead, they made anger rise in my chest. "That's not love, Rachel," I said quietly. "Love doesn't go hunting for attention from another man when things get hard. Love doesn't hide text messages and secret lunches. Love doesn't slow dance with someone else while your husband watches." I lifted the suitcase off the bed. "I'm going to grab a few things from the bathroom, then I'm leaving." "Can we at least talk before you make any final decisions?" she pleaded. "Please, maybe with a counselor?" I paused in the doorway. "Maybe," I said, "but not today." 10 minutes later, I was rolling my suitcase out to the car. Rachel stood on the porch, arms wrapped tightly around herself, watching me prepare to walk away from the life we'd built together. For a moment, I almost broke. I almost told her we'd figure it out, almost climbed those steps back into the arms that had held another man only days before. Instead, I got into my car and pulled away, watching her shrink in the rearview mirror until she was gone. As I turned onto the main road, my phone buzzed with a text. I assumed it was Rachel. Another apology, another plea. It wasn't. It was Tyler. "How'd it go? You okay?" I answered. She admitted everything. "Heading to you now. I'll explain when I get there." His reply came instantly. "Doors open. Beers are cold. Take your time." For the first time since the gala, I felt something other than anger and hurt. I felt grateful. In the middle of all this, at least I wasn't completely alone. After 3 days at Tyler's, I realized I needed more distance, more space in my head and around me. I checked into a Marriott downtown. It wasn't luxurious, but it was clean, anonymous, and had a decent bar where I could sit with a whiskey and pick through the wreckage of my marriage. Rachel texted every day, rotating between apologies, updates about bills and the dog, and increasingly desperate messages begging me to talk. I only replied to logistical questions. Everything else, I ignored. I knew the silence was hurting her. Part of me knew that might be exactly what I wanted. A week after leaving the house, I was sitting at the hotel bar when my phone lit up with Tyler's name. "Hey," I answered. "Just checking in," he said. "Haven't heard from you in a couple of days." "I'm alive," I said. "Surviving." "Rachel called me." I straightened. "What? When?" "This morning. She's worried about you. Says you barely respond to her texts." "Did you tell her where I am?" "No," Tyler said firmly. "That's not my call to make. But man, you can't hide out in a hotel forever." He was right. I'd already taken a week off work, told them it was a family emergency. But normal life was waiting for me. Projects, invoices, and the bigger question of whether my marriage could or even should be saved. "I know," I sighed. "I'm just not ready to face her yet." "I get it," he said. "But there's something else you should hear. I asked around about this Adrian guy." My grip tightened on the phone. "And?" "Word is, he's been seen with other women before Rachel. Same pattern. Always married, always connected to the foundation. People say he likes the challenge." A cold fury settled in my chest. "So, she's just another conquest," I muttered. "Looks that way," Tyler said. "I thought you should know." After we hung up, I stared down at my drink, Tyler's words replaying in my mind. Rachel wasn't special to Adrian. She was just another married trophy, another test of his charm. The realization should have made me angrier, but instead it sharpened something that had been blurry all week. This wasn't really about him. Adrian was a symptom. The problem was us, and what our marriage had turned into long before he showed up. I pulled out my phone, and for the first time in days, I was the one to start the conversation. "We need to talk. Tomorrow. 7 p.m. Neutral Ground, the coffee shop on Wilson Street. Her reply came almost immediately. "I'll be there. Thank you, Connor." As I put my phone down, I understood something I hadn't wanted to admit. I'd already made my decision. I just didn't know if Rachel was prepared to hear it. I got to the coffee shop 15 minutes early and took a table in the back corner. The place was only half full. Thankfully, whatever happened next, I didn't want witnesses. Rachel walked in at exactly 7 p.m. She looked smaller somehow. She'd lost weight in just a week. Her clothes hung looser on her frame. Dark circles pooled under her eyes, and her hair was tied back in a simple ponytail instead of her usual, carefully styled waves. She spotted me and hesitated, like she wasn't sure if she was welcome. I motioned to the chair across from me, and she sat down, every movement cautious. "Thank you for meeting me," she said quietly. I nodded. "Do you want something to drink?" "I'm fine." She twisted her wedding ring around her finger, the same nervous habit she'd had since our wedding day. "How are you managing?" I studied her face, searching for something. Remorse, fear, love. All of it was there, layered with a bone-deep exhaustion that mirrored my own. "Have you been in contact with Adrian?" I asked. She flinched but didn't look away. "He's called and texted. I haven't answered." "Why not? If he makes you feel so seen, so understood." "Because I finally see what he was really doing," she said, her voice gaining an edge. "He doesn't care about me. I'm just another challenge, another married woman he can pull away from her husband." "Tyler told you?" I asked. She shook her head. "He didn't need to. I did my own digging after you left. found 2 other women from the foundation with the same story. He has a pattern. I let that sink in, then asked, "And what about us? Do we have a pattern too?" "Yes," she said softly. "We stop appreciating each other. We coast. We forget why we chose each other in the first place." Her honesty caught me off guard. "I haven't been the husband you deserve," I admitted. "I've been distant, swallowed up by work, and I should have talked to you about what I needed instead of assuming you just understand." Tears filled her eyes. "So, where does that leave us?" I'd spent the entire week asking myself that same question, lying awake in my hotel room, staring at the ceiling. I'd weighed 12 years of shared life against a single devastating betrayal, measured the love we had against the trust we'd lost. "I don't know if I can trust you again," I said at last, "but I also don't know if I'm ready to throw away 12 years. "What are you saying?" she whispered. "I'm saying I want to try." The words surprised me as much as they did her. Not to pretend this never happened, not instant forgiveness, but to try, with boundaries, with counseling, with honesty. Relief flooded her features, quickly tempered by caution. "When will you come home?" "Not yet," I said. "I still need time, but maybe soon." She nodded, understanding what I was offering. Not a clean slate, not a happy ending, but a chance. A door left, cracked open instead of slammed shut. We left the coffee shop together and stepped into the cool Chicago evening. Under a streetlight, Rachel stopped, her face half in shadow. "I love you, Connor," she said. "I never stopped, even when I lost my way." I didn't say it back. I couldn't. Not yet. But for the first time in days, the anger and hurt weren't the only things I felt. There was something else there now, small, fragile, but real. Something that, with time and work, might grow into trust again. "I'll call you tomorrow," I said, then walked to my car alone, knowing that sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that leave the ending unwritten.